The ship fell from the sky like a wounded bird. It left a trail of smoke and fire across the evening clouds of New Carthage. The human colony had seen many things in its 50 years of existence, but nothing quite like this. Governor stood on the balcony of the administration building and watched the vessel crash into the wheat fields 3 kilometers away. The impact sent a column of dirt and flame into the air. Emergency, sirens began to wail across the city. "Get me a response team out there now," said to his assistant, "and tell them to be careful. We don't know what that is." The year was 2347. Humanity had spread across 12 star systems. They had built colonies on worlds that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. They had fought wars with pirates and criminals. They had even made contact with alien civilizations. But humanity was still small. In the vast galactic community, humans were newcomers. The older species called them because Earth was considered a dangerous planet. Too much gravity, too many predators, too many diseases. The fact that humans had survived and thrived on such a world made other species nervous. Most alien civilizations kept their distance from humanity. They traded when necessary. They talked when required, but they did not trust the aggressive primates from the death world. Had learned to accept this. Humanity would prove itself in time. For now, they would grow quietly and build their strength. The response team reached the crash site in 15 minutes, watched the live feed from their helmet cameras as they approached the burning wreckage. The ship was unlike anything in human databases. It was long and elegant, with curves that suggested art more than engineering. But now it was broken and burning. "Governor, we have survivors," the team leader reported. They're not human, sir." "Can you identify the species?" "Checking now." There was a pause. "Database says they're species, known for art and philosophy, no military capability. They're considered one of the most peaceful species in the galaxy." Frowned, that was hundreds of light years away. What were they doing here in human space in a damaged ship? "Bring them in," he ordered. "Get medical teams ready, and someone find me everything we have on them." The survivors were brought to the colony's main hospital. There were 12 of them. They looked like tall insects with 4 arms and 2 legs. Their exoskeletons were a beautiful blue-green color, but now they were cracked and bleeding. Their large, multifaceted eyes showed something that needed no translation: fear. The medical teams did what they could. Human medicine was not designed for biology, but the doctors worked with what they had. 3 of the aliens died within the first hour. The remaining 9 clung to life. Waited outside the medical bay. He had read everything available on them. They were an old species, much older than humanity. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They were known for their beautiful art, their complex philosophy, and their complete rejection of violence. They had no army. They had no weapons. They believed that intelligent species should solve problems through discussion and understanding. This belief had served them well for thousands of years. But something had gone terribly wrong. One of the survivors was strong enough to speak. She was brought to in a wheelchair designed for human bodies. She did not fit well, but she did not complain. Her name, she said, was Saul. She was an ambassador. "Thank you for helping us," she said. Her voice was strange to human ears, but the translator made her words clear. "We did not know if you would." "Why wouldn't we help?" asked. Saul's large eyes studied him. "The other species. They warned us about humans. They said you were dangerous, violent, unpredictable." Smiled sadly. "We can be all those things, but we also help people who need help. What happened to you, Ambassador? Why is a ship crashing on a human colony world?" Saul was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with grief. "Our people are dying, Governor. We are being exterminated." She told him the story. It had begun 2 years ago. A species called the Iran had approached space. They called themselves the Orion Dominion, and they were powerful. They controlled over 400 star systems. They had armies that numbered in the trillions. The Orion were conquerors. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted. Some species they enslaved. Some they simply destroyed. They viewed the galaxy as theirs to use as they pleased. When they found they saw a species with beautiful worlds, rich resources, and no ability to fight back. They saw easy prey. They tried to negotiate. They offered to share their resources. They offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, anything to avoid conflict. The Orion laughed at them. The killing began soon after. They are systematic, Saul said. Her voice broke as she spoke. They move from world to world. They kill everyone they find. The adults they sometimes take as slaves, but the children, the eggs. She could not continue, waited. They destroy them, Saul finally said. They say our children are worthless as slaves, too weak, so they kill them, they broadcast it, they make us watch. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had seen many terrible things in his life, but this was different. What about the Galactic Council? He asked. Haven't they done anything? Saul made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. The Council has expressed concern. They have issued statements. They have imposed sanctions on the Dominion, but the Dominion does not care about sanctions. They do not trade with the Council species. They take what they want by force. And no one is willing to fight them. The Council species are afraid. The Dominion is vast. Their fleets are enormous. And the Council species, they have not fought a real war in centuries. They have forgotten how. They have committees and debates and resolutions, but they have no warriors. Understood. The galaxy was run by species who had evolved past violence. They had created a civilization of peace and prosperity, but they had no answer for an enemy who did not play by their rules. So you came to us, he said. Yes, Saul looked at him with those large alien eyes. We came to the dangerous ones, the species that everyone fears. She paused. Governor, my people have lost 17 colony systems. Billions have died. Billions more have been taken as slaves. Ours is under siege. We have perhaps months before we are completely destroyed. What are you asking for? Saul slowly, painfully, lowered herself from the wheelchair. She knelt on the floor before. It was clearly agonizing for her injured body, but she did it anyway. I am asking for protection, she said. I am begging for it. We have nothing to offer you. We have no military value. We have no strategic resources that you need. All we have is our art, our culture, and our children who are being murdered while the galaxy watches and does nothing. Looked down at the alien kneeling before him. She was so different from him. Different biology, different history, different everything. But in that moment he saw something universal. He saw a mother pleading for her children. He saw desperation and hope and terrible, terrible fear. Please, Saul whispered, they are killing our children. Reached down and helped her back into the wheelchair. His hands were gentle. Ambassador, he said, I am just a colonial governor. I don't have the authority to commit humanity to a war. But I can promise you this, your message will be heard, every word of it. And I will make sure that the people who can make this decision understand exactly what is happening. Saul looked at him. Do you think they will help? Was quiet for a moment. He thought about humanity. He thought about their history. They were a species that had done terrible things to each other over the centuries. Wars, genocides, cruelties beyond counting. But they had also shown incredible capacity for good. They protected the weak. They fought against injustice. And they had a special hatred for those who hurt children. Ambassador, he said, I don't know what humanity will decide, but I know my species. When they see what the Dominion is doing to your children, they will not be able to look away. They will not be able to stay neutral. That night sent a transmission to Earth. It was short, but it contained everything. The testimony of Ambassador Saul, the footage she had brought from space, the evidence of what the Dominion was doing. He added only 5 words of his own. They hurt children, awaiting orders. The transmission traveled at faster-than-light speeds, bouncing through relay stations across human space. It reached Earth in 3 days. On Earth, the message was received by the Unified Human Command. It was reviewed by intelligence officers, military commanders, and political leaders. The footage was analyzed and confirmed. The images spread through the human networks. People saw cities burning. They saw families being separated, adults being dragged away in chains. They saw the eggs, thousands of them, containing the next generation of being crushed under Iran's feet while soldiers laughed and celebrated. The reaction was immediate. Across human space, people demanded action. Protests filled the streets of every major city. The message was the same everywhere. We cannot stand by and watch this happen. On New Carthage, received word that his transmission had been received. He was told to provide all possible aid to the survivors and to keep Ambassador Saul safe. High-level discussions were. A decision would be made soon. He went to see the ambassador. She was recovering slowly in the hospital. The human doctors had consulted with medical databases and had developed new treatments. She would live. They received your message, he told her. The whole of human space is talking about your people. They've seen what the Dominion is doing. And what will they do? Saul asked. Her voice was tired but hopeful. I don't know yet, but Ambassador, I want you to understand something. When humans make a decision like this, we don't do it halfway. If we decide to help you, we will help you completely. There will be no half measures. Saul tilted her head, studying him. The other species said humans were brutal, savage, that you solve all problems with violence. That's not entirely true, said. We try other methods first. Diplomacy, negotiation, economic pressure. But when those fail, when we face an enemy that only understands force. He paused. Then yes, we can be brutal, we can be savage. It's not something we're proud of, but it's part of who we are. Will it be enough? Saul asked. The Dominion is so vast, so powerful. Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Ambassador, the galaxy thinks they know what humans are capable of. They've seen us in peacetime. They've seen us playing nice, following the rules, trying to fit into their civilized society. They have no idea what we're really capable of when we decide that the rules no longer apply. The next day, the decision came from Earth. It was transmitted to every human colony, every ship, every station in human space. Humanity would respond to the plea. They would provide protection. But not just protection. The message from Unified Command made it clear. This would not be a defensive action. This would not be a limited intervention. The Iran Dominion had been judged by humanity, and the judgment was final. Read the orders with a mix of grim satisfaction and genuine fear. He had known that humanity would not stand by and watch children being murdered, but he had not expected this. He went to tell Ambassador Saul. She deserved to know what was coming. Your request has been granted, he said. Humanity will protect your people. Saul's multifaceted eyes brightened with hope. You will fight the Dominion. We will do more than fight them, Ambassador. Handed her a tablet containing the official declaration. Read it for yourself. She read it slowly, her translator converting the human words into concepts she could understand. As she read, her eyes grew wider. When she finished, she looked up with something that might have been shock. This is not a declaration of war, she said. No, agreed, it's not. This is a declaration of extermination. Yes. Saul was silent for a long moment. The Dominion has trillions of soldiers, hundreds of fleets, 400 systems. How can humanity, how can you possibly? Ambassador, you asked us for protection. You asked us to stop the people who are killing your children. We are going to honor that request, completely. But so many will die, not just soldiers, civilians, families. Looked at her with hard eyes. How many civilians have died? How many families have been destroyed? How many of your children have been murdered?" Saul could not answer. "The Dominion had a choice," continued. "They could have left your people alone. They could have accepted your offers of peace. They chose to be monsters instead. Now they will learn what happens when monsters attract the attention of something worse." 3 days later, a message was broadcast across all frequencies, in all languages, reaching every corner of Oran space. It came from the unified human command. "To the Oran Dominion, the species is now under the protection of humanity. You will immediately cease all hostile actions against them. You will withdraw from all space. You will return all prisoners unharmed. You have 72 hours to comply. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second warning." The response from the Dominion came quickly. It was broadcast on public channels for all to see. The Dominion laughed at the humans. They called them insects pretending to be predators. They said humanity was a minor species with delusions of grandeur. And then, to prove their contempt, they executed 100 prisoners on live broadcast. They made sure the humans could see everything. The adults begging for mercy, the eggs being crushed, the soldiers celebrating. The final message from the Dominion was simple. "Come and try, little humans. We will add your species to our collection." On New Carthage watched the broadcast with Ambassador Saul. She wept, a strange whistling sound as her people died on the screen, stood beside her in silence. When it was over, he received a new transmission from Earth. It was one word: authorized. He looked at Saul. "Ambassador, I want you to know that we did give them a chance. We offered them a way out. They chose this." "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," said quietly, "they learn why the galaxy fears the—" Somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, humanity's hidden weapons began to wake. Ships that had never been registered with the Galactic Council. Weapons that violated every treaty ever signed. Technologies that had been developed in secret, hidden away for the day when they might be needed. That day had come. On Earth, Fleet Admiral stood in the command center of Unified Human Command. Around her, officers worked at their stations, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. On the main screen, a countdown timer showed the hours remaining until the deadline expired. "Admiral," one of her officers said, "the Dominion has made no move to comply with our demands. Their fleets are still in space. The executions continue." Nodded, she had expected nothing less. "When the timer reaches 0, she said, "activate the Reapers." The officer hesitated. "Admiral, once we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will never look at us the same way." Looked at the screens showing the Dominion's atrocities. She thought about the children. She thought about Ambassador Saul kneeling before a human governor, begging for help. "The galaxy can think what it wants," she said. "We made a promise. We're going to keep it." The countdown continued. The deadline approached. And in the dark spaces where humanity kept its darkest creations, the Reapers waited for their orders. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you made enemies of the— Fleet Admiral had not slept in 48 hours. She stood in the war room of Unified Human Command, surrounded by screens that showed more data than any human mind could process. But she was not trying to process all of it. She was focused on one thing: the countdown timer. 36 hours remained. Around her, the greatest military minds in human space worked at their stations. Generals, admirals, intelligence officers, and strategic planners. They had been called to Geneva from every human colony, every fleet, every military base. This was the largest gathering of human military leadership in history. And they were all terrified. "Admiral, the latest intelligence reports are ready," said Commander David Park, her chief of staff. He placed a tablet on the table in front of her. "The numbers are significant." Picked up the tablet and read. "The Oran Dominion, 407 star systems, 12 trillion citizens, standing armies of 200 billion soldiers, 3,000 capital ships, each one larger than anything in the human fleet, 50,000 smaller combat vessels, industrial capacity that dwarfed human civilization by a factor of 20. By every measure, the Dominion was a giant. Humanity was an insect by comparison. "What are our current numbers?" asked. 340 combat vessels, including our 12 dreadnoughts, 20 million active military personnel, 12 star systems, total population of 8 billion. Park paused. "Admiral, by conventional military metrics, we cannot win this war. The math simply doesn't work." "I know," set down the tablet. "That's why we're not going to fight a conventional war." She walked to the main display and called up a new file. The screen changed to show a series of schematics. Most of the people in the room had never seen these designs. They were classified at the highest levels. Project Absolute said, "Initiated in 2298 after our first contact with the Galactic Council. When we learned how large and dangerous the galaxy truly was, our leaders made a decision. We would play nice. We would follow the rules. We would be good galactic citizens. But we would also prepare for the day when playing nice wasn't enough." The schematics on the screen showed weapons. Terrible weapons. Weapons that violated every treaty, every agreement, every principle of civilized warfare. "The Reapers," continued. "Self-replicating autonomous kill systems. Once deployed, they multiply exponentially, consuming raw materials from asteroids, moons, anything they can find. They don't stop until their targets are eliminated or they receive a shutdown code." She moved to the next schematic. "Planet crackers. Gravity-based weapons capable of destabilizing a planet's core. Complete destruction in under 6 hours. Next, neural disruptors. Targeted electromagnetic pulses that destroy the brain function of specific species while leaving others unharmed. We've calibrated versions for over 200 alien biologies, including the Iran. Next, stellar igniters. Devices that can trigger premature fusion reactions in a star's core, turn a life-giving sun into a weapon of mass extinction." The room was silent. Even the most hardened military officers looked pale. "These weapons have been hidden for 50 years, said. "The Galactic Council doesn't know they exist. Nobody knows except for a small group of humans who have carried this secret. Today, you join that group." General Sarah Williams, commander of the Marine Corps, spoke up. "Admiral, if we use these weapons, we won't just be winning a war. We'll be committing genocide. The entire Iran species will cease to exist," finished. "Yes, I'm aware." "Is that what we've become? Monsters?" Turned to face the general, her expression was hard. "Show them the footage." The main screen changed. It showed images from space. Cities burning, civilians running, soldiers laughing as they killed, and the children, the eggs in their nurseries, being destroyed by the thousands while Iran troops recorded it for entertainment. The footage went on for 10 minutes. Nobody spoke. Some officers looked away. Others watched with tears streaming down their faces. Others watched with growing rage. When it was over, spoke again. "The Iran have done this to 17 worlds. They plan to do it to every system. And when they're done with they'll find another species to prey upon, and another, because that's what they are. That's all they know how to be." "The Galactic Council," someone began. "Has done nothing," interrupted. "They've issued statements. They've imposed sanctions that the Dominion ignores. They've expressed concern and sympathy and thoughts and prayers. And while they talk, children die." She looked around the room. "I know what I'm asking. I know what it means. We are going to destroy an entire civilization. We are going to kill trillions of beings. Many of them will be innocent. Many of them will have had nothing to do with the atrocities we've seen. They will die anyway." "Then how are we any different from them?" General Williams asked. "We're not doing this for conquest. We're not doing this for resources or territory or glory. We're doing this because someone asked us for help, because children are dying, because the galaxy has shown that it cannot or will not stop monsters, so the job falls to us. Paused. We are not heroes in this story. We are the weapon that the innocent use against the guilty, and weapons don't get to be clean. The debate went on for hours. There were arguments and counterarguments, ethical considerations, strategic analyses, emotional appeals. In the end, it came down to a vote. The leadership of humanity, every senior military commander, every major political figure with authority over defense matters, cast their ballots. The result was not close. 92% voted yes. Project Absolute was authorized. Watched the final tally appear on the screen. She had expected it. She had seen the footage, same as everyone else. She had seen the outrage spreading across human space, the protests demanding action, the volunteers flooding recruitment centers. Humanity had made its choice. Now came the hard part. Begin deployment, she ordered. All Absolute assets are now active. Timeline. Weapons release upon expiration of the deadline unless the Dominion complies with our demands. Admiral, do you really expect them to comply? No, said. I expect them to laugh at us. I expect them to kill more prisoners to show us they're not afraid, and then I expect them to die wondering why they didn't take us seriously. Across human space, things began to move. Hidden facilities that had never appeared on any map opened their doors. Ships that had never been registered with any authority lifted off from secret bases. Personnel who had lived double lives for decades received their activation orders. In the asteroid belts, massive construction platforms began producing Reapers by the million. Each one was the size of a small spacecraft, equipped with weapons, propulsion, and the terrible ability to make copies of itself. They waited in dark spaces, dormant but ready. On secret stations orbiting dead worlds, the planet crackers were brought online. Each one was a monster of engineering, larger than most space stations, designed for one purpose: the complete destruction of inhabited worlds. In classified laboratories, the neural disruptors were calibrated one final time. Scientists who had spent their careers hopping these weapons would never be used ran their final diagnostics with shaking hands. And in the deep black, where no one could see, humanity's most terrible secret waited. The stellar igniters, devices that could end solar systems. They had been placed years ago, hidden in the outer reaches of strategic star systems across the galaxy. Insurance policies that no one ever wanted to collect on. While the weapons prepared, humanity sent its message to the Iran Dominion. It was broadcast on all frequencies, translated into every known language, impossible to miss or ignore. To the Iran Dominion, the species is now under the protection of humanity. You will immediately cease all hostile actions against them. You will withdraw from all space. You will return all prisoners unharmed. You have 72 hours to comply. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second warning. The response came within hours. It was broadcast publicly, clearly intended to humiliate the humans. The Iran overlord himself appeared on the screen. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with gray skin covered in ritual scars. Behind him, his throne room was decorated with the skulls of conquered species. "Little humans," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can threaten the Dominion? You are nothing. A tiny species on a handful of worlds. We have crushed civilizations older and stronger than you. We have conquered empires that ruled for 10,000 years. What are you? Infants, playing at being warriors." He gestured to someone off-screen. "You want to protect the... Let me show you what we think of your protection." The view changed. It showed a group of prisoners, 100 of them, adults and elderly, chained together. Iran soldiers surrounded them with weapons raised. "These insects have been praying for rescue," the overlord continued. praying to their gods, praying to the council, and now, apparently, praying to the... Let us see how their prayers are answered. The execution was slow. The Iran soldiers took their time. They made sure the cameras captured everything. When they reached the eggs, a dozen of them, containing unborn children, they crushed them one by one, holding each one up to the camera first so the humans could see what they were destroying. When it was over, the Overlord returned to the screen. "Come and try, little humans. We will add your species to our collection. Your women will serve in our pleasure houses. Your men will die in our mines. And your children," he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth, "your children will be entertainment." The transmission ended. In the war room, no one spoke. The silence was absolute. Then slowly reached for the communications panel. She opened a channel to all human forces. "This is Fleet Admiral. You have all seen the Dominion's response. You have seen what they are. You know what they have done. In 36 hours, we will show them what we are. All forces prepare for absolute deployment. There will be no retreat. There will be no mercy. There will be no stopping until the job is done." She closed the channel. Around her, officers began working with renewed purpose. Whatever doubts they might have had were gone now. The Dominion had made sure of that. On New Carthage, Governor watched the execution broadcast with Ambassador Saul. She made no sound as her people died. She simply watched, her multifaceted eyes fixed on the screen, her whole body trembling. When it was over, turned off the display. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry you had to see that." Saul was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "They were from the eggs. Those were children from my sister's nursery. She sent them away when the invasion began, hoping they would be safe." Didn't know what to say. There were no words for this kind of pain. "Your people," Saul continued. "They sent demands. They gave the Dominion a chance to stop. And this is how the Dominion responded." She looked at with something new in her eyes, something that might have been hope or might have been fear. "What will humanity do now?" "What we said we would do," answered. "We don't make empty threats, Ambassador. We don't bluff. When we say there will be consequences, there are consequences." But the Dominion is so powerful. The Dominion thinks they know what power is. They're about to learn otherwise. On Earth, in her private quarters, Admiral stood before a window looking out at the city of Geneva. It was night, and the lights of the city sparkled below her. 8 billion humans on this planet. 8 billion more across human space, all of them counting on her to make the right decisions. She thought about what was coming, the deaths that would result from her orders. Not thousands, not millions, trillions, an entire species wiped from existence. History would remember her as either a savior or a monster, probably both. Her communicator beeped. "Admiral, we've received a message from the Galactic Council. They're demanding an emergency session to discuss our ultimatum to the Dominion. They're calling it provocative and dangerous." Laughed bitterly. Provocative. The Dominion is committing genocide in plain sight, and we're the provocative ones. How should we respond? Tell them we appreciate their concern. Tell them we'll be happy to discuss the matter after the current situation is resolved. And tell them to stay out of our way. Understood, Admiral. She turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, they were dying. Children were being murdered, and the civilized galaxy was more concerned about proper diplomatic procedure than about stopping the killing. That was about to change. The hours passed, the deadline approached. Across human space, families gathered to watch the news. They knew something big was coming. They didn't know exactly what, but they could feel it. A tension in the air, a sense that the universe was about to shift. In churches and temples and mosques, people prayed. Some prayed for victory. Some prayed for the souls of those who would die. Some prayed for forgiveness for what humanity was about to do. In military bases and aboard warships, soldiers checked their equipment and said goodbye to loved ones. They had seen the footage of what the Dominion did to the. They knew what they were fighting against. They were ready. In laboratories and engineering bays, technicians ran final checks on the weapons that would end a civilization. They worked in silence, their faces grim. They had built these things hoping they would never be used. Now they prayed that they would work as designed. And in the dark spaces between stars, the hidden fleets of humanity waited. Ships that had never been seen by galactic eyes. Weapons that had never been fired in anger. All of it pointed at the Oran Dominion, waiting for the order to begin. Admiral watched the countdown timer reach its final minutes. Around her, the war room was tense. Officers stood at their stations, ready to execute orders. Screens showed the positions of every human asset, every Dominion fleet, every system still under siege. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from space. It's Ambassador Saul." "Put her through." Saul's face appeared on a side screen. She looked exhausted, grief-stricken, but somehow still standing. "Admiral," she said, "I wanted to speak with you before whatever happens next. I wanted to thank you. Whatever comes, my people will remember that humanity answered our call, that you stood up when no one else would. Ambassador, you should know what we're about to do. It won't be clean. It won't be surgical, what we're about to unleash." "I know." Saul's voice was steady. "I have seen your weapons capabilities in the briefings. I know that you are going to destroy the Dominion completely. I know that many innocent beings will die alongside the guilty. And you're at peace with that." Saul was quiet for a moment. "The Dominion murdered my sister's children. They have murdered billions of my people. They would murder billions more if no one stopped them. I am not at peace with anything, Admiral. I doubt I ever will be again. But I understand necessity. I understand that sometimes, to stop a monster, you must become something monstrous yourself. I'm sorry it came to this." "So am I," Saul paused. "Admiral, when this is over, when the Dominion is gone, will humanity be able to live with what you've done?" Considered the question. "We'll have to. That's part of the price. We'll carry this forever. But we'll also know that we protected those who couldn't protect themselves, that we stopped the killing, that when children cried out for help, we answered. Then may your gods go with you, Admiral, and may mine forgive us all." The transmission ended. Turned back to the main display. The countdown timer showed 10 seconds remaining. 9, 8, 7. She thought about the children, about the eggs being crushed while soldiers laughed, about the message they had sent asking for help. 6, 5, 4. She thought about the Dominion's response, the arrogance, the cruelty, the absolute certainty that they were untouchable. 3, 2, 1. The timer reached 0. "Admiral," her operations officer said, "the deadline has expired. No response from the Dominion. Their forces remain in space. Atrocities continue." Nodded, she had expected nothing less. "Activate the Reapers," she said. "Deploy all absolute assets. Authorization code Alpha 77 Omega." Across human space, the machines of war came to life. Ships jumped into fold space. Weapons armed themselves. The self-replicating swarms began their terrible multiplication. And in 407 star systems, the Oran Dominion had no idea that its extinction had just begun. "God forgive us," someone whispered in the war room. Admiral said nothing. She simply watched the screens as humanity's answer began its journey toward the Dominion. The galaxy had wanted to know what they were capable of. They were about to find out. High Commander stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship Eternal Conquest. He was pleased with himself. The human ultimatum had been exactly the entertainment he had hoped for. His troops were still laughing about it. Threatening the Dominion, the idea was absurd. Had commanded the siege of the for 6 months. It had been easy work. The insects had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight back. They simply died, which was what inferior species were supposed to do. The human message had arrived 3 days ago, had expected the Council to send another useless diplomatic mission. Instead, the humans had made threats, actual threats, as if they had any power to back them up. He had responded by executing prisoners. He had made sure the humans could see everything. The message was clear: we are not afraid of you. We will never be afraid of you. The deadline had passed an hour ago. There had been no human attack, no human fleet, nothing but silence. "High Commander," his sensor officer said, "we're detecting something. Long-range scanners are showing unusual readings in the outer system." "What kind of readings?" "I'm not certain, sir. The signatures are unfamiliar. They appeared suddenly approximately 10 minutes ago. They seem to be spreading." Frowned, "Show me." The main display changed to show a tactical map of the system. That was at the center, surrounded by Dominion ships. In the outer reaches near the asteroid belt there were new contacts, thousands of them, and as watched, the number grew. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. "What are those?" demanded. "Unknown, sir. They're small, each one is approximately the size of a fighter craft, but they're multiplying. The numbers are increasing exponentially. 100,000, 200,000. Sir, they're heading toward us, all of them, velocity increasing." Felt the first hint of unease. "Launch interceptors, destroy them." "Yes, sir." The Dominion fighters launched by the hundreds. They raced toward the approaching swarm, weapons hot. The first Dominion pilots to reach the swarm opened fire. The small craft died by the thousands. They seemed fragile, easy to destroy. The Dominion pilots reported victory after victory. The swarm was being pushed back. Then the dead craft began to reassemble themselves. "Sir, the destroyed units are. They're rebuilding. They're using debris from our own missiles to create new units." Watched the display in disbelief. For every enemy craft destroyed, 2 more appeared. The swarm had stopped being pushed back. Now it was advancing again, faster than before. 500,000, 1 million, 2 million. "All ships open fire," ordered. "Everything we have." The Dominion fleet unleashed its full firepower. Beam weapons and missiles and enough destructive power to shatter a moon. The swarm took terrible losses. And kept coming. And kept growing. "High Commander, we're detecting similar swarms emerging in all Dominion systems, all 407 of them. They appeared simultaneously. They're all advancing on our positions." Stared at the display. This was impossible. The humans didn't have this capability. Nobody had this capability. What were these things? The first Reaper reached the Dominion fleet. It was small, barely the size of a shuttle. It should have been insignificant against a capital ship with armor measured in meters. But it didn't try to penetrate the armor. Instead, it attached itself to the hull and began to eat. "Sir, the enemy craft, it's consuming our hull plating. It's using the material to build copies of itself." Within minutes, the Dominion cruiser Heavy Fist was covered in Reapers. They swarmed over its surface like insects, breaking it down piece by piece. The ship's distress signals cut off as its communication systems were consumed. Then the Reapers that had built themselves from the Heavy Fist moved on to the next ship. Watched his fleet begin to die. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out 407 times. Dominion fleets that had ruled uncontested for centuries found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. The Reapers did not negotiate. They did not accept surrender. They did not stop to celebrate victories or mourn losses. They simply advanced, consumed, and... On Orion Prime, the of the Dominion, the Supreme Overlord watched the reports coming in from every corner of his empire. System after system falling silent. fleets being torn apart by swarms of machines that grew stronger with every ship they destroyed. "What is this?" he demanded of his advisors. "What have the humans done?" "Great Overlord, we believe these are self-replicating weapons, machines, theoretical constructs that we believed no species was insane enough to actually build." "Why didn't we build them?" "Because once deployed, they cannot be easily stopped. They will consume everything in their path until they run out of targets or are given a shutdown code. The humans have unleashed weapons of extinction." The Overlord was silent for a long moment. "How many do we face?" "When they first appeared, there were perhaps 1 million total across all systems. Current estimates." The advisor checked his data pad. "Current estimates suggest approximately 800 million and growing. They're doubling every 2 hours. Send for reinforcements from the reserve fleets. We will crush them with numbers." "Great Overlord, the reserve fleets are already under attack. There are no reinforcements coming." For the first time in his long reign, the supreme overlord of the Oran Dominion felt fear. While the Reapers consumed the Dominion's military, humanity's special forces began their true mission. They had not come to fight the Oran. They had come to save the... Colonel James Mitchell led the extraction team on the... His squad had landed in the chaos of the Reaper attack, slipping past Dominion forces that were too busy trying to survive to notice a handful of human soldiers. The slave camps were enormous. Millions of prisoners held behind energy fences guarded by Oran troops, but the guards were abandoning their posts now. The sky was full of Reapers, and the Dominion soldiers cared more about their own survival than about keeping insects in cages. Mitchell's team cut through the fences with plasma torches. The inside stared at them in confusion and terror. "We're human," Mitchell announced through his translator. "We're here to evacuate you. Follow us to the landing zone. Human ships will take you to safety." One of the prisoners, an elderly female with a cracked exoskeleton, approached him slowly. "You came," she said. "You actually came." "Yes, ma'am, we did." "The Oran said no one would help us. They said the galaxy had abandoned us. They said we would die here." Mitchell looked up at the sky, where Reaper swarms were tearing apart Dominion warships like they were made of paper. "The Oran were wrong about a lot of things. Move quickly, please. We have a lot of people to evacuate and not much time." Similar scenes played out across Dominion space. Every world where prisoners were held, human special forces appeared. They moved like ghosts through the chaos, finding the prisoners, cutting them free, guiding them to extraction points. The humans did not fight the Oran. They didn't need to. The Reapers were doing that job. The humans were there for one reason only, to keep the promise they had made. "You asked for protection. We said yes. Now let us take you somewhere safe." On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, High Commander watched his empire die. The swarms had grown beyond counting. Billions of Reapers now swarmed through the system, consuming everything they touched. The Dominion fleet, once the terror of a dozen species, was being eaten alive. And then something worse arrived. "High Commander, new contact emerging from Fold space. It's massive, larger than anything in our databases." The planet Cracker emerged from faster-than-light travel like a monster rising from the deep. It was 30 kilometers long, a floating mountain of metal and malice. Its weapons systems were unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen. It ignored the battle around it. The Reapers parted to let it pass. It had only one target, the... "Stop it," ordered. "Throw everything we have at that ship." The remains of his fleet turned to face the new threat. Thousands of weapons fired at once, a barrage that should have been enough to destroy a small moon. The planet Cracker didn't even slow down. Its shields absorbed the attack like water absorbing raindrops. It continued its slow, inevitable approach to the planet below. Opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, This is High Commander of the Dominion. I demand to know your intentions." The response came in a cold, synthetic voice. "This planet has been designated for orbital cleanup. Recommend immediate evacuation of all non-hostile life forms. Detonation will commence in 6 hours." "You can't do this. There are billions of people on that world." "Affirmative. Dominion population estimated at 4 billion. Slave population estimated at 2 million. Human extraction teams are currently evacuating prisoners. All Dominion citizens are advised to evacuate." "Evacuate to where? Your swarms are destroying everything." The planet Cracker did not respond. It simply continued its approach. Slammed his fist against the command console. This couldn't be happening. The Dominion was the greatest power in the galaxy. They had conquered species that had ruled for. They could not be defeated by a handful of and their machines. "All ships fall back to the. We will make our stand at Aura Prime. Send word to the Supreme Overlord. Tell him we need everything he has." What he couldn't know, was that the same scene was playing out in every Dominion system. 407 planet crackers, emerging simultaneously. 407 worlds marked for destruction. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that could strike everywhere at once. They had built their empire on the assumption that they would always have time to respond, to reinforce, to overwhelm their enemies with superior numbers. But you can't reinforce when everywhere is under attack. You can't overwhelm an enemy that doesn't care about losses, because it builds new forces faster than you can destroy them. The humans had not come to fight a war. They had come to execute a sentence. On Aura Prime, the Supreme Overlord watched his empire crumble. Reports came in from every system. The swarms were everywhere. The planet crackers were approaching inhabited worlds. Dominion fleets were being consumed faster than they could retreat. "We must negotiate," the Overlord said. "Contact the humans. Tell them we accept their terms. We will withdraw from space. We will return the prisoners. We will pay whatever reparations they demand." His chief advisor looked at him with hollow eyes. "Great Overlord, I don't think they're interested in negotiation." "They must be. No species would choose annihilation over peace. Contact them. Make them understand that we surrender." The message was sent. For hours there was no response. The swarms continued their advance. The planet crackers continued their countdown. Then finally, a human face appeared on the communication screen. She was an older woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in medals and insignia. Her expression showed nothing. No anger, no triumph, no mercy. "I am Fleet Admiral of the Unified Human Command," she said. "I speak for humanity." The Overlord leaned forward eagerly. "Admiral, I am the Supreme Overlord of the Auran Dominion. We wish to discuss terms of surrender. The Dominion is prepared to." "There is nothing to discuss." The Overlord blinked. "I don't understand. We are offering complete capitulation. We will do whatever you demand. Just stop the attack." "No." "No," the Overlord's voice rose. "What do you mean, no? We surrender, we give up, you've won." Admiral's expression didn't change. "We gave you a warning. 72 hours to withdraw from space and return all prisoners. Your response was to execute 100 civilians on live broadcast. You crushed children's eggs while your soldiers laughed. That was a mistake, a terrible mistake. The officers responsible will be punished. We will make reparations. We will. You will die." The words hung in the air. The Overlord stared at the human woman, unable to comprehend what he was hearing. "You cannot mean that. You cannot intend to destroy an entire species over insects." "They asked us for protection. We said yes. When you hurt them, you made yourself our enemy, and we don't leave enemies alive to hurt people again. This is genocide. The galaxy will condemn you. The Council will." The council did nothing while you slaughtered billions. They issued statements while children died. Their opinion does not concern us. Paused. You were warned, Overlord. You laughed. You murdered prisoners to prove you weren't afraid. This is the consequence of that choice. Wait, please wait. There must be something, anything we can do. We have resources, technology, information. We can serve you. We can be useful, please. Admiral looked at the supreme overlord of the Iran Dominion, ruler of 400 worlds, commander of trillions of soldiers. She looked at him begging for his life and the lives of his people. The beg too, she said. You showed them no mercy. We will show you the same. The transmission ended. The overlord screamed orders: flee, evacuate, save whoever can be saved. But there was nowhere to flee. The Reapers were everywhere. The planet crackers were closing in. The trap had been sprung across the entire Dominion simultaneously, and there was no escape. On Aura Prime, the population watched the sky darken with Reaper swarms. They watched their ships burn and their stations fall. They watched the planet Cracker take position in orbit, its massive weapon systems powering up. Some tried to surrender. They broadcast messages of peace, of apology, of desperation. The machines did not respond. Some tried to fight. They manned ground-based weapons and fired at the swarms. They were consumed. Some simply prayed to their gods for salvation that would not come. The planet Cracker fired. The weapon was not a beam or a missile. It was gravity itself, twisted and weaponized. It reached down into the heart of Aura Prime and pulled. The planet's core destabilized in minutes. Earthquakes shattered cities. Volcanoes erupted across every continent. The crust cracked open, revealing the liquid fire beneath. Within 6 hours, Aura Prime was a field of debris. The Supreme Overlord died with his world, still unable to understand how this had happened. How a species from an insignificant corner of the galaxy had destroyed everything he had built. Across the Dominion, the pattern repeated. System after system fell silent. Worlds that had stood for thousands of years were reduced to rubble. Fleets that had conquered dozens of species were consumed by machines that grew stronger with every victory. The Galactic Council watched in horror. They demanded explanations. They demanded that humanity stop. They threatened sanctions, isolation, war. Humanity did not respond. The machines continued their work. In 1 week it was over. The Iran Dominion, with its 400 systems and its trillions of citizens and its centuries of conquest, ceased to exist. Not defeated, not conquered, erased. Only scattered survivors remained, groups on remote outposts, individuals who had been away from home when the attack began. They numbered in the thousands, perhaps the tens of thousands. A species that had once ruled a significant portion of the galaxy was now nearly extinct. The Reapers, their targets eliminated, received their shutdown codes. They went dormant, drifting in the void, waiting for orders that would hopefully never come again. The planet Crackers to hidden positions, disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. And across what had been Dominion space, the only ships moving were human transports, carrying survivors to safety. Colonel Mitchell stood on the bridge of his transport ship, watching the stars pass by. Behind him, the cargo holds were filled with refugees, thousands of them, rescued from Dominion prison camps. One of them, the elderly female he had first encountered, approached him. "Colonel, where are you taking us?" "To a planet called Haven. It's in human space near New Carthage. It's been prepared for your people. Homes, farms, everything you need to start over." "Why?" they asked. "Why did you do all this for us? We have nothing to offer you. We cannot fight. We cannot pay. We are just insects," as the Dominion said. Mitchell looked at her. "Ma'am, you came to us asking for help. You told us your children were dying. That's all we needed to know." "But the cost. So many died. Not just the Dominion, your own soldiers, the resources to build those machines. the burden on your people's souls. Some things are worth paying for. Some things are worth carrying. You asked for protection. We said yes, and we meant it. There was silent for a long moment. Then she did something Mitchell had never seen her do. She reached out with one of her 4 arms and took his hand in hers. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for the good and the terrible, thank you." Mitchell didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and watched the stars, carrying his cargo of survivors toward a new home. Behind them, in the darkness between galaxies, the ashes of the Dominion drifted cold and silent. Humanity had made a promise. Humanity had kept it. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from over 300 species filled the massive hall. Some sat in specially designed seats. Others floated in liquid tanks. A few existed as holographic projections from distant. All of them had come for the same reason. They needed to talk about the humans. High Counselor Ara of the Collective called the session to order. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had served on the council for 400 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements. He had helped build the galactic civilization that had brought prosperity to countless worlds. He had never seen anything like what the humans had just done. "This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in order," he announced. "The matter before us is the human action against the Oran Dominion. I call upon Ambassador of the Federation to present the findings of the investigation committee." Ambassador rose from her seat. She was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. Her species was known for their calm rationality, but today even she seemed shaken. "High Counselor, fellow representatives, the investigation committee has concluded its preliminary assessment of the recent events in Oran space." She paused, consulting her notes. "The facts are as follows." She began to recite the data. The number of Oran systems destroyed, 407. The estimated death toll, 12 trillion sentient beings. The time from first attack to complete annihilation, 7 standard days. The weapons used by the humans include self-replicating autonomous systems, gravitational destabilization devices, and various other technologies that we did not know existed. These weapons were deployed simultaneously across all Oran territory, suggesting a level of planning and preparation that spans decades. The chamber was silent. Even the representatives who had disliked the Dominion, and there were many, seemed stunned by the scale of what had happened. "The human action was not a war," Ambassador continued. "It was an extermination. The Oran species has been reduced to approximately 40,000 individuals scattered across remote locations. For all practical purposes, they are extinct. Their civilization, their culture, their history, all of it has been erased." She looked around the chamber. "The investigation committee concludes that humanity has committed the largest act of genocide in galactic history." The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted accusations and demands. Some called for immediate military action against humanity. Others argued that such action would be suicidal after what they had just witnessed. A few quietly noted that the Dominion had been doing the same thing to the, and no one had cared enough to stop them. High Counselor Ara called for order. Eventually, the chaos subsided. "We have received a request from the human government to address this council," he said. "After much debate, the request has been granted. I now call upon Fleet Admiral of the Unified Human Command to speak." The chamber fell silent as a holographic projection appeared in the center of the room. Admiral stood there, her uniform crisp, her expression calm. She looked small compared to the massive alien representatives surrounding her, but no one in the room made the mistake of thinking she was weak. "High Counselor, representatives, thank you for allowing me to address this body." Her voice was steady, almost casual. "I understand that you have questions about humanity's actions. I will answer them as clearly as I can." Representative of the hegemony rose to speak. He was large and aggressive, with scales covering his body and teeth that had evolved for tearing flesh. His species had been rivals of the Dominion for centuries. "Admiral, your species has committed genocide on a scale never before seen. You have killed trillions. How do you justify this atrocity?" Looked at him without flinching. "We received a request for protection from the people. They were being systematically exterminated by the Oran Dominion. We issued a warning to the Dominion and gave them 72 hours to withdraw. They responded by executing prisoners and daring us to attack. We attacked. That does not justify killing an entire species." The Dominion was killing an entire species. They had destroyed 17 worlds and were preparing to destroy the rest. Billions of civilians had already died. Children were being murdered in their nurseries. Your council issued statements of concern. We ended the threat by becoming the very thing you claim to oppose. His expression hardened. "Representative, the Dominion did not stop killing when we asked. They did not stop when we warned. They laughed and killed more. The only way to save was to remove the Dominion's ability to threaten anyone ever again. That is what we did. And if another species threatens someone, will you destroy them too? If another species begins systematically exterminating civilians and refuses to stop when given the opportunity, yes, we will." The chamber erupted again. Councillor Ara struggled to restore order. When he finally succeeded, he spoke directly to "Admiral, you must understand our concern. You have demonstrated capabilities we did not know existed. You have shown a willingness to use those capabilities in the most extreme manner possible. How can any species feel safe knowing what humanity is capable of?" Was quiet for a moment. "Counselor, for 50 years, humanity has been a minor member of the galactic community. We've followed your rules. We've respected your treaties. We've tried to fit into the civilization you built. And what did we see?" She gestured around the chamber. "We saw a galaxy where the strong prey on the weak, where species like the Dominion can commit atrocities for centuries, and the response is sanctions and diplomatic notes. We saw a civilization that talks about peace but has no answer when someone refuses to be peaceful. They came to you first," continued. "They begged the council for help. You offered them words, so they came to us because they had no one else. They knelt before us and asked us to save their children. We said yes." "But the cost," someone started. "The cost was paid by those who earned it. The Dominion chose to be monsters. They chose to kill children for sport. They chose to laugh when given a chance to stop. Every death that followed is on them, not on us." Ambassador spoke up. "Admiral, even if we accept your justification for attacking the Dominion, the scale of your response raises serious concerns. You didn't just defeat them. You didn't just stop the attacks. You exterminated them. You left no possibility of recovery or redemption." Nodded. "That's correct." Why not accept their surrender when it was offered? Why not allow at least some portion of their species to survive? Because they would have done it again. The chamber was silent. "The Dominion has been conquering and killing for 800 years, said. 800 years of taking what they wanted from species who couldn't stop them. Do you really believe they would have changed? That a species with that much history of violence would suddenly become peaceful just because they lost one war? People can change. Societies can reform. Some can, the Dominion wouldn't have. We studied them. Their entire culture was built on conquest and domination. Their religion told them they had a divine right to rule. Their children were raised from birth to see other species as inferior. Even if we had defeated them conventionally and imposed terms, within a generation they would have rebuilt. Within 2 generations they would have found a new target. The cycle would have continued. So you decided to end the cycle permanently?" "Yes," his voice was flat, final. "We removed them from the galaxy. They will never threaten anyone again. They are safe. Every species that would have been the Dominion's next victim is safe. That is the result we achieved. Counselor Ara leaned forward. And what of justice, Admiral? What of mercy? What of the innocent Iran who played no part in their government's crimes? Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Counselor, I don't expect you to understand this. Your species hasn't fought a real war in 1,000 years. You've forgotten what it means to face an enemy that wants to destroy everything you are. But humans remember. We remember the wars we fought against each other before we learned to live in peace. We remember what happens when you show mercy to an enemy who will not do the same. She looked around the chamber. Yes, innocent Iran died. Yes, children who had done nothing wrong died alongside the soldiers and leaders who ordered the atrocities. I will carry that weight for the rest of my life. Every human who participated in this action will carry that weight. We do not pretend to be righteous. We do not claim to be heroes. Then what do you claim to be? We claim to be the species that answered when they asked for help. We claim to be the species that stopped a genocide in progress. We claim to be the species that made sure it could never happen again. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, so be it. They are alive because of what we did. Their children will grow up free because of what we did. That matters more to us than your approval. The council debated for days after this address. Proposals were put forward. Sanctions against humanity, military containment, diplomatic isolation. Each proposal was discussed, argued, and eventually rejected. The truth that no one wanted to say aloud was simple. They were afraid. Humanity had just demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything the Council species possessed. The weapons that had destroyed the Dominion could just as easily be turned against anyone else. Starting a conflict with humanity would be suicide. Everyone knew it. In the end, the Council passed a resolution condemning humanity's actions in the strongest possible terms. They demanded that humanity destroy its weapons of mass extinction. They demanded that humanity submit to Council inspections. They demanded apologies and reparations. Humanity's response was delivered by their ambassador, a polite rejection of all demands. "We will not apologize for saving lives," the ambassador said. "We will not destroy weapons that allow us to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and we will not submit to inspections by a body that watched the die and did nothing." The resolution was filed and forgotten. The Council moved on to other business, but everything had changed. Species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive now spoke of them in whispers. Governments that had refused to trade with humans suddenly found themselves eager to establish relations. Military commanders who had laughed at human capabilities began studying their tactics with desperate intensity. And across the galaxy, in the quiet corners where the powerful did not look, something else began to happen. The small species, the weak ones, the ones who had lived in fear of larger neighbors, they began to talk among themselves. "Did you hear what the humans did?" They asked for help, and the humans said yes. They protected them. They protected strangers they had never met. Maybe we should talk to the humans too. On Earth, Admiral stood before the memorial that had been erected for the campaign. It was a simple thing, a black wall with names etched in white. Not the names of human soldiers lost in battle, though there were some of those. The names belonged to the dead, all the billions who had died before humanity arrived, as many as could be identified, carved into stone so they would never be forgotten. Beside her stood Ambassador Saul. The diplomat had recovered from her injuries and had been appointed as the official representative of her people to humanity. It was a position she took very seriously. "I did not expect this," Saul said, looking at the wall. "A memorial for us." "They should be remembered," replied. "They were the reason we fought, the reason we did what we did. Without them, without their suffering, we would have had no cause." "Do you regret it, what you did to the Dominion?" Was quiet for a long moment. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that there was no other way. I regret the deaths of those who didn't deserve to die." She paused. "But do I regret stopping the killing? Do I regret saving your people? No, I would do it again." "The galaxy fears you now." "Good. Fear keeps people honest. Fear makes them think twice before they attack the defenseless." Saul turned to face the admiral. "My people owe you everything. Our survival, our future, our children who will be born free. We can never repay this debt." "We didn't do it for repayment." "I know, that's what makes it so remarkable." Saul reached out and took his hand in hers. "Admiral, they have decided something. We have no military, we have no weapons. We will probably never have these things. It is not in our nature, but we can offer something else." "What's that?" "Ourselves, our art, our philosophy, our culture. Everything we are, we offer to humanity, not as payment but as partnership. You protected us when no one else would. We wish to stand with you for as long as the stars burn." Looked at the alien ambassador, so different from her, yet speaking words that touched something deep in her soul. "They want to be our allies. More than allies, friends, family if you will accept us. You showed us that the galaxy is not as cold as we feared, that there are species who will fight for the innocent. We wish to be part of that." Smiled. It was a rare expression for her, one that few had ever seen. "Ambassador, I think humanity would be honored to have thee as family." News of the alliance spread quickly. The most peaceful species in the galaxy, standing with the most feared. It was an unlikely partnership, the artists and the warriors, the philosophers and the soldiers. But it worked. They brought something to humanity that they badly needed. Proof that their capacity for destruction was balanced by their capacity for protection. Every time a spoke of human kindness, every time they showed their children the memorial on Earth, every time they reminded the galaxy that humanity had saved them, it softened the fear just a little. And humanity brought something to that they needed just as badly, the certainty that they would never be victims again, the knowledge that if anyone threatened them, they would answer. It was not a perfect arrangement, nothing ever is, but it was a start. Across the galaxy, the balance of power continued to shift. The Council still met and passed resolutions. The great powers still maneuvered for advantage. Trade routes opened and closed. Alliances formed and dissolved. But there was one new factor that everyone had to consider. One species that had proven it would not stand by while atrocities were committed. One species that kept its promises, no matter the cost. In the dark spaces between stars, humanity's weapons waited. The Reapers drifted in silent orbit, dormant but not dead. The planet crackers hid in the shadows of distant moons. The technologies of extinction remained ready, just in case they were needed again. The galaxy hoped they would never be needed again. Humanity hoped so too. But they kept the weapons anyway. Because the universe was vast and cold, and somewhere out there, someone might be hurting children. And when that happened, humanity wanted to be ready to answer. On New Carthage, Governor watched a transport land at the spaceport. The refugees had arrived, the first wave of colonists for the new settlement. They emerged from the ship slowly, cautiously, blinking at the alien sun that would now be their home. A young female approached him. She was barely an adult by her species' standards, and she looked terrified. "Governor," she said, her translator rendering her voice as barely a whisper, "is it true? Are we really safe here?" Looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, human warships patrolled the system. Somewhere beyond, the weapons that had ended the Dominion waited in the dark. "Yes," he said, "you're safe. You're under human protection now." "What does that mean, being under human protection?" Smiled. "It means that anyone who wants to hurt you will have to go through us first, and we don't move." The young looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she relaxed. For the first time since she had left her dying, she allowed herself to believe that she might have a future. "Thank you," she whispered. nodded and watched her walk away, joining her people as they began their new lives on a human world. The galaxy would never forget what humanity had done. The terror, the destruction, the absolute finality of their response to those who hurt the innocent. But maybe, just maybe, they would also remember that humanity had done it for a reason, that they had answered a desperate plea from strangers who had nowhere else to turn, that they had kept their promise, even when the cost was terrible. Maybe that mattered too. Only time would tell. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Dominion. The galaxy had changed in ways both large and small. The balance of power had shifted. Old alliances had crumbled and new ones had formed. But the biggest change was something that couldn't be measured in territory or fleet strength. Fear had a new face. Commander walked through the corridors of the human embassy on station. The station was the largest in the neutral zone, a place where species from across the galaxy came to trade, negotiate, and spy on each other. Once, humanity had been a minor presence here, a small delegation in a forgotten corner of the station. Now, the human embassy occupied an entire section. She passed through security checkpoints staffed by human marines in full combat armor. The weapons they carried were standard issue, nothing like the horrors that had ended the Dominion. But every alien who saw them knew what those soldiers represented. Reached her office and sat down at her desk. A stack of reports waited for her. Intelligence briefings, diplomatic requests, trade proposals. Being the deputy ambassador to the Galactic Council had become a very busy job. The first report on her stack made her pause. It was from the Intelligence Division, flagged as urgent. Ambassador, we've intercepted communications from the Empire. They appear to be planning military action against the Collective. Our analysis suggests this could lead to a situation similar to the crisis. Leaned back in her chair and sighed. They were a peaceful species, aquatic beings who lived in ocean worlds and had little interest in conquest or conflict. They were artists and philosophers, much like they had been, and they were aggressive expansionists who had been eyeing space for decades. Before the Dominion fell, nobody would have cared. Another strong species preying on a weak one. Business as usual for the galaxy. Now everything was different. She picked up her communicator. Get me Admiral Priority Channel. The Admiral's face appeared on screen within minutes. She looked older than she had a year ago, more gray in her hair, more lines around her eyes. The weight of what she had done showed in every feature. But her eyes were still hard, still ready. Commander, I've seen the intelligence reports. What's your assessment? They are testing us, Admiral. They want to know if our response to the Dominion was a one-time event or a policy. If they attack thee and we do nothing, every aggressive power in the galaxy will take note. And if we do something, then they'll know that our protection isn't limited to that anyone who commits atrocities faces the same consequences. Was silent for a moment. Have they asked for our help? Not yet. I don't think they know how serious the threat is, but our intelligence suggests they are planning a first strike within the next 3 months. Then perhaps we should make our position clear before the shooting starts. Nodded slowly. Draft a message to make it very clear that we are watching. Make it very clear what happened to the last species that decided to commit genocide. Understood, Admiral, and reach out to them quietly. Let them know that if they want human protection, they can have it. We won't force ourselves on anyone, but we won't let another happen either. The transmission ended. Began drafting messages, one threatening, one offering hope. 2 sides of the same coin, 2 aspects of what humanity had become. On New Carthage, the colony of Haven was flourishing. What had begun as a refugee settlement was now a thriving community. They had built homes suited to their biology, with tall spires and open spaces that caught the light of the foreign sun. They had planted gardens filled with crops from their seeds that had been saved and smuggled out before the Dominion completed its destruction. Ambassador Saul walked through the central garden, watching children play among the flowers. Children, born free, knowing nothing of the terror their parents had survived. They laughed and chased each other, their voices carrying on the wind. She still had nightmares sometimes. She still woke in the night thinking she could hear Dominion soldiers breaking down the doors. But those moments came less often now. The fear was fading, slowly replaced by something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. A human woman approached her, governor's assistant, a young woman named Sarah. Ambassador, you have visitors. They arrived this morning on a transport from the outer systems. Saul tilted her head in curiosity. Who are they? They said they're from the collective. They asked to speak with you specifically. The ambassador felt a chill of recognition. She knew what this meant. She had been in their position once not so long ago. Bring them to me. They were beautiful creatures, tall and slender, with silvery scales and flowing fins that seemed to move like water even in the air. There were 3 of them, and they all looked terrified. The leader introduced herself as Wave Singer. She spoke through a translator that converted her musical language into something Saul could understand. Ambassador, please forgive this intrusion. We did not know who else to turn to. Tell me what's happened. The story came out in fragments, reports of fleet movements, intercepted communications suggesting invasion plans, a council that responded with the same useless concern it had shown when they were dying. We heard about what the humans did for your people, Wave Singer said. We heard that they answered when no one else would. We heard that you are safe now under their protection. Saul nodded slowly. It is true. Can they help us? Can they protect us too? Saul thought about the question carefully. She remembered kneeling before Governor, begging for help, not knowing if the humans would answer. She remembered the fear and the hope and the terrible uncertainty. I cannot speak for the humans, she said finally, but I can tell you what I have learned about them. They are not saviors, they are not saints, they are capable of terrible, terrible things. What they did to the Dominion, you have heard the stories. We have heard. Then you know what they are capable of. If you ask them for help and if they say yes, they will not stop until the threat is ended, completely ended. There will be no half measures. There will be no compromise. Are you prepared for that? Wave Singer exchanged looks with her companions. We are a peaceful people, Ambassador. We have never made war. The thought of violence sickens us. So are the, but when we faced extinction, we had to make a choice. Accept death or accept help from those who could save us, even if their methods horrified us. And do their methods horrify you? Saul looked out at the garden, at the children playing in the flowers, at the community that existed because humanity had answered her plea. What the humans did to the Dominion was terrible, she said. I will never forget the reports, the death toll, the scale of destruction. Part of me will always mourn for the lives lost, even the lives of those who wanted to destroy us. She turned back to but my people are alive. Our children are growing up free. Our culture continues. And that would not be true if the humans had not answered our call. So yes, their methods horrify me, but I am grateful beyond words that they were willing to use those methods on our behalf. Wave Singer bowed her head. We understand. Will you help us speak to them? I will do more than that. Come with me. Saul led the delegation to the Human Administrative Center. She requested an immediate audience with Governor and was granted one within the hour. The governor listened to the story with a grim expression. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Your intelligence matches ours, he finally said. We've been watching for some time. Their buildup is concerning. Then you will help us? Wave Singer asked, hope and fear mingling in her voice. That's not my decision to make, replied, but I will pass your request up the chain. Admiral and the Command Council will make the final call. How long will that take? Not long. We've learned from our experience with when someone asks for help, we don't waste time with debates. The governor stood and extended his hand, a human gesture of agreement that the had learned about. Wave Singer took it in her webbed fingers. I can't promise you anything, said, but I can tell you this. Humanity doesn't like bullies. We don't like species that prey on the peaceful. If they want to start something, they should think very carefully about what happened to the last empire that decided to commit genocide. They left with something they hadn't had when they arrived: hope. 1 week later, a message was broadcast across all frequencies. It reached every system, every station, every ship in the explored galaxy. It came from the unified human command, and it was very simple. To all species, humanity is extending protection to the collective, effective immediately. Any hostile action against territory, vessels, or citizens will be treated as an attack on humanity itself and will be met with appropriate force. This is not a negotiation. This is not a warning. This is a statement of fact. The message was followed by detailed footage of what had happened to the Dominion. Every planet cracked open, every fleet consumed by Reapers, every system reduced to debris. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who test us. The Empire canceled its invasion plans within 48 hours. Their emperor issued a statement expressing respect for sovereignty and denying any hostile intentions. Diplomats were dispatched to negotiate peaceful trade agreements. Nobody believed they had changed their minds out of the goodness of their hearts. Everyone knew they were simply afraid. In the council chambers, the reaction was mixed. Some representatives welcomed humanity's actions as a necessary correction to galactic lawlessness. Others condemned it as vigilante justice, arguing that humanity had no right to decide who was protected and who wasn't. The human ambassador listened to the debates with patient calm. When asked to respond, she said simply, "We make no claims to authority over the galaxy. We don't seek to rule or control anyone, but we will not stand by while innocents are slaughtered. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to try to stop us." No one tried. On Earth, Admiral held her final press conference as Fleet Admiral. She was retiring, stepping down from the position she had held during the most momentous events in human history. The room was packed with journalists from across human space. They had questions. Everyone had questions. "Admiral, as you step down, what would you say to those who call you a war criminal?" Considered the question. "I would say that I did what I believed was necessary to save innocent lives. History will judge whether I was right." "Do you regret what happened to the Dominion?" "I regret that they made it necessary. I regret that there was no other way, but I do not regret the outcome. They are alive. They are safe. The galaxy is a little less cruel today than it was 2 years ago." "What do you say to those who fear humanity, who see us as monsters after what we did?" Smiled, a rare expression that transformed her stern features. "I say that they should think about why we did what we did. We didn't destroy the Dominion for territory or resources or power. We did it because someone asked us for help, because children were dying and no one else would stop it." She looked directly into the cameras. "If that makes us monsters, then perhaps the galaxy needs more monsters. Because the civilized species, with all their rules and protocols and diplomatic processes, stood by and watched while billions died. We did not stand by. We will never stand by. And any species that preys on the innocent should understand exactly what that means." The press conference ended, walked out of the room and down the long corridor to her office. She had one last duty to perform. Her successor was waiting for her, Admiral James Park, a younger officer who had served under her during the Dominion campaign. He would carry the burden now. "Admiral Park," she said, handing over her command codes, "the fleet is yours." "I'll try to live up to the example you set," he replied. "Don't try to be me, be yourself. Make your own decisions, just remember one thing." "What's that?" Looked out the window at the stars, the same stars she had been watching her entire career. "We are not warriors because we love war. We are warriors because there are people who need protecting. Never forget that. Never let the power we wield become an end in itself. It's a tool, a terrible tool. Use it wisely." "I understand. I hope you do. I hope you never have to use it at all." She paused. "But if you do, don't hesitate, don't second guess. When someone asks for help and you decide to answer, answer completely. That's what it means to be human." She shook his hand and walked away. Her career was over. The future belonged to others now. 1 year later, the galaxy was transformed. Humanity remained a minor power by most measures. 12 systems, a population that barely registered compared to the great empires. But influence is not measured only in numbers. They flourished under human protection. Their art and philosophy began to spread across human space, enriching the culture of their protectors. Human children studied music. Students attended human universities. 2 species, utterly different, had become family. They emerged from their oceanic isolation and began to engage with the wider galaxy for the first time in centuries. Protected by the shadow of human power, they no longer feared their aggressive neighbors. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, other species began to take notice. The weak ones, the vulnerable ones, the ones who had lived in fear for generations, never knowing when a stronger neighbor might decide to take what they had. They watched They saw species that had been targeted for extinction now living in peace and safety. They began to wonder if perhaps, maybe, there was hope for them too. A transmission arrived at human space. It came from a small species called who lived on a single world in a distant sector. They were being threatened by raiders, criminal enterprises that preyed on isolated systems. Their plea was simple. "We have heard of what you did for We have heard that you protect those who cannot protect themselves. We are few. We are weak. We have nothing to offer you, but we ask with all hope, can you help us?" The message was received by a young communications officer named Lieutenant Maya, a distant relative of the governor of New Carthage. She read it twice, then forwarded it to command. Within hours, a response was dispatched. Human patrol ships were diverted to space. The raiders received a warning, leave or die. They left. They were safe. It wasn't a major event. It didn't make the news on most worlds. No planets were cracked, no species was exterminated, no council resolutions were passed. It was just a small action, a minor deployment of force to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. But it meant everything and word spread. Humanity helps. Humanity answers. Humanity protects. The pattern repeated again and again across the years that followed. Small species, forgotten species, species that no one else cared about, they sent their messages into the void, hoping that the humans would hear. And humanity answered. Not always with fleets and weapons, sometimes with food and medicine, sometimes with engineers to help build defenses, sometimes with diplomats to negotiate on their behalf. The tools varied, but the message was always the same. You asked for help, we said yes. On the memorial wall on Earth, new names were added every year. Not just names now, names, the names of dozens of species who had been saved by human intervention. The wall grew, the list of the protected grew longer. And in the dark spaces between stars, humanity's terrible weapons waited. The Reapers drifted in silent orbit. The planet crackers hid in their shadowed positions, ready, always ready, for the day when someone decided to test the again. That day would come. Sooner or later, some ambitious empire would decide that humanity was bluffing, that the response to the Dominion was a one-time event, that the humans could be beaten. When that day came, humanity would be ready. But until then, they waited. They protected. They answered the calls of those who had nowhere else to turn. Because that was what it meant to be human. In her retirement home on Earth, former Admiral watched the sunset through her window. She was old now, truly old, with white hair and hands that trembled when she lifted her teacup. But her eyes were still sharp, still watching. The news showed footage of a human aid convoy arriving at yet another species in need. Threatened by a neighbor, now under human protection. The convoy was met by crowds of grateful aliens, waving signs in human languages, cheering for their saviors. Watched and allowed herself a small smile. She had done terrible things. She would never escape that truth. The ghosts of the Dominion would follow her to her grave. But she had also done necessary things. She had made humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that protected strangers. The legacy was not clean, it would never be clean, but it was something. Her communicator beeped, a message from Admiral Park, her successor. "Admiral, I thought you would want to know. We received a new request for protection today. A species called apparently some of them have spread to new colonies outside human space. They're facing threats from a local power, and they asked for our help." Laugh softly, the asking for help again, some things never changed. "What was our response?" she asked. "What do you think?" We said yes. She nodded, satisfied. "Good, tell them we'll keep them safe." "Always, Admiral, that's the job now." The transmission ended. Set down her tea and looked out at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, species were living in fear. Somewhere out there, children were being threatened by those stronger than them. Somewhere out there, someone was crying out for help. And somewhere out there, humanity was answering. It was enough. It had to be enough. She closed her eyes and listened to the silence of a peaceful Earth evening, grateful that she had lived long enough to see what humanity had become. Not the monsters the galaxy had feared. Not the saints no one could be. Something else, something new. The ones who answered.